안녕하세요 구독자 여러분. 마이클의 English in Korean 클래스에 오신 걸 환영합니다. 우리 오늘도 그 영어 뉴스 요약, 맞아요, 제가 영어로 진행해야죠. Oops. Today we're doing the English news summary, conducted all in English, as you know well. Today's topics are the Hillary Clinton email scandal, and also the refugee crisis in Syria and spreading across Europe. So those are the two topics we're going to discuss today. If we do three, it seems to get a little too long. I think a good length for this broadcast is probably 15 to 20 minutes. I think 25 or 30 minutes would be a little too tedious, a little too much to handle in one sitting. So let's go ahead and talk about the Hillary Clinton email scandal, email controversy. We'll kick off today's episode with that. So today is the U.S. News Summary for September 2015. So I'll put that up here so we remember. September 2015, okay? Alright, so first of all, this scandal dates back. When we talk about something extends back or goes back, we say dates back to blank. Dates back to blank. So if a certain expression emerged or appeared on the scene 1,000 years ago, we would say it dates back 1,000 years. Or this expression dates back to the Roman Empire. So this expression, for example, a triumph. He celebrated a triumph. He won an ovation. They were decimated. He has legions of fans. Him and his cohorts. All those expressions date back to Rome. So when we talk about how far something goes back, we say it dates back. Now this scandal obviously doesn't date back 1,000 years because Hillary wasn't around then. This scandal only dates back, 7 years to Obama's first term. So when somebody works as president or has an elected office for 3 or 4 years or 5 years, we say a term. So this scandal dates back to Obama's first term as president when Hillary Clinton was serving as Secretary of State. She was the Secretary of State of the United States at that time. And one important thing to remember here is that this state has two meanings. Well, the word state has a lot of meanings in English, but two that we need to worry about today. One is state as in the United States has 50 states, right? We have 50 states, 48 contiguous states, 48 states that are attached to each other, plus Alaska and Hawaii for a total of 50 states. That's one meaning of state. Another meaning is country. The original meaning of state is country. So she's Secretary of State, but in this case that state means country, not just one state. She's not just the Secretary of one state, she's the Secretary of the United States. And in that case, this state means country. So she was the Secretary of State under Obama during his first term, and the crisis emerged because she used a personal email server for business of state. So when she was carrying out official business in her role as Secretary of State, she used a personal email address and a personal email server, and the server was in her house. Now this is a problem because there are very strict rules governing how politicians, how diplomats can send and receive messages They need to keep records of everything they say and everything that is said to them when they're working in this official capacity. So in America, we have two main political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. So she's a Democrat. So politicians on the Republican side are saying this is a huge scandal, that she could be hiding things, and that if she didn't have anything to hide, she should have used an official government email address and an official U.S. government server. So Republican lawmakers say that her actions make her look very suspicious. And many have called for, when we say called for, that's another way of saying request. Many politicians have called for the server to be handed over. They want to look at her server and see if there's any hidden information there, or see if there are any emails she's trying to hide. But the problem is complicated even further by the fact that she says the email server was deleted, that all the emails have been deleted. Okay, so then they would be unretrievable, right? If they're deleted, they may be gone forever. But there are two important things here. One is even if the emails were deleted, there's two functions you can perform on a server: delete and wipe. Apparently, there's still no clear information on this either, but if the emails were deleted, they may be retrievable. If the server was wiped, then they may be gone forever. So I'll explain what wiping a server means. The action verb wipe means what I'm doing now. Wipe this off, right? That's called wiping. I wiped it off the whiteboard. But when you talk about a server, what that means is you take off all the information, delete all the information, then you write random information on top of it, then delete that, so that the original information can never be retrieved. But delete just means taking the information off. So if all she did was delete the emails, they can still be retrieved. They may be recovered. But if the server was wiped, then they're irretrievable. They can never be recovered. So I think the situation is still unfolding. We don't know if the server was wiped or just deleted. I think investigators are looking into that right now. So Republicans say that obviously she's hiding something. This is very suspicious. Why did she delete those emails? It doesn't make any sense, and this is a big scandal. But Democrats and Hillary Clinton are saying it was an honest mistake. She didn't realize that was a problem. She didn't realize it was a breach of protocol. So protocol are the things you have to do, regulations, requirements. A breach means to separate from that, to diverge from that, to do something different. So the situation is still unfolding. It's still in progress. I don't know if it'll become a bigger scandal or if it'll just fade away and she'll move on. But like I said, this scandal dates back to her time as Secretary of State. One word we use also is tenure. So this scandal dates back to her tenure as Secretary of State. That's a similar word to term. When you're engaged in a particular role, when you're working in a certain position, you could say my tenure as a professor, his tenure as CEO, her tenure as Secretary of State. It's similar to term. Okay, so let's review the words we learned. So delete is easy, right? We all know that, just to erase something, but wipe. Wipe, in general, I'm wiping off the desk. Could you wipe off the table for me? Okay, I wiped off the cell phone screen. That's what wipe means. But figuratively, when discussing a computer server, it means to erase everything, rewrite it with random ones and zeros, then delete that. Okay, so that the original information cannot be recovered. Dates back. When something, the roots of some problem or the roots of some word go back a long way, we say date back to, and then when. So date back to 2008. The roots of this problem date back to 2008. Term and tenure are basically the same. State, we learned, in this case means country. So every year, Obama, the President of the United States, gives a famous and very important speech called the State of the Union. In that case, that's a different state. That state is that state means, the state of being, right? The condition. In that case, the condition of the United States, the State of the Union. But we learned that state can mean 50 states, or it can mean the country, as it does in Secretary of State. Call for means to demand something or request something. And I think that's it. I think those are the important expressions that we covered. All right, let's move on to the second news topic of the day. That's the refugee crisis stemming from the Syrian civil war or Syrian conflict. Okay, so let's see, refugee. Okay. So as you may or may not know, there's a kind of civil war, or at least armed conflict within Syria. There's the existing president, Bashar Al-Assad, and his regime. Regime is often the word used negatively to describe a government, someone's government. We say a regime of a certain dictator. And it's usually an authoritarian government. So somebody who's a dictator, somebody who's a strong man, we describe their government as a regime. So his regime has been attacking or trying to subdue people who have stood up against him. And in so doing, he's bombed neighborhoods in Damascus, and he's used chemical weapons against his own population, causing 12 million people, or half the population of Syria, to be displaced. Okay, now this is an important word. If you say misplaced, I misplaced my book, okay? So this is a book I'm reading. I lost it. Misplaced means lost. So I misplaced my keys. I misplaced my book. That means I lost it. But displaced, as we see here, people who are uprooted and moved somewhere else, or lose their home, lose their place of work. So uprooted is another important expression. Okay, so 12 million Syrians have been uprooted in the conflict. Uprooted. 12 million people have been displaced in the conflict. They've lost their homes. Okay, they have no place to live, so they're moving. They're on the move. So 12 million Syrians are on the move and have become refugees seeking asylum in other countries, right? They're looking for a haven. They're looking for a safe place to live because Syria is so dangerous now because of the continuing conflict. So many of them have fled across the oceans, across the seas, trying to reach Greece. Many have headed for Germany and other countries across Europe. So European countries are struggling with trying to come up with a plan on how to deal with this, how to cope with this situation. They're obviously in need of aid. The refugees are in need of aid and hungry. So in need of aid, in need of blank is an important pattern. In need of blank. So you could always say they need aid. They need help. You could also say they are in need of aid. They are in need of our help. That's another expression you see commonly when referring to refugees, especially. They need specifically humanitarian aid. So, the word, how we describe help, when it's to help someone else's welfare or well-being, we use the word humanitarian. So the UN is struggling to provide humanitarian relief, humanitarian aid to the refugees. There's another meaning of humanitarian. You could also say he's a great humanitarian. That's similar to saying he donates a lot of money to help the poor. Okay, he's a philanthropist. Philanthropist means he loves people. Originally, that's the meaning. But a philanthropist would be someone like Bill Gates, who's donated billions of dollars to help other people. So people could describe Bill Gates as a humanitarian or as a great philanthropist. But in this case, we're using another meaning of humanitarian. The people, the refugees from Syria, need humanitarian aid. That would be clothing. That would be a warm place to sleep. That would be food. Those are examples of humanitarian aid. So the countries of the EU, the European Union, are struggling to cope with, that means like handle, right? Handle the influx of refugees from Syria. Okay, so influx means coming in, right? A group of people, the influx of refugees, the amount of people that are coming in. This is the act of coming in, right? Okay, and cope with means handle. So the countries of the European Union are struggling to cope with the influx of refugees. That's how you can say that. Okay, so I think that's all we have to say about the refugee crisis. I mean, there's been some terribly dramatic photos that we've seen on the news, some heart-wrenching, tear-jerking photographs have been floating around the internet recently, and they've caught the attention of the entire world, I believe. So let's go back and review the words we learned. Okay, so refugee, those are the Syrians that have been displaced, who've been uprooted from their homes and are now on the move. Those are called refugees. They're escaping the Al-Assad regime in Damascus, in Syria. They are in need of help. They are in need of humanitarian aid. The countries of the EU and also the United States are trying to cope with this influx of refugees. So on a day-to-day basis, okay, regularly, cope with is an expression we use a lot. So I'm trying to cope with this workload. Let's say suddenly I have a lot more work to do. My boss is giving me a lot more work. I'm trying to cope with all this new work. I'm trying to cope with all these new clients. So that's an expression you can use in your day-to-day life. I'm trying to cope with all this homework. Displaced is probably not a word you'll use in your day-to-day life, but if there's another typhoon in Korea or a flood, you could say farmers were displaced in the flood, displaced by the flood. You can use it that way. And also in need of, That's an expression a lot of people use, right? He's in need of help. He's in need of medical attention. I'm in need of a loan, right? Whatever it is, in need of is a way to express that. It's the same as saying, I need blank, or I'm in need of blank. I'm in need of assistance. It's a little more formal. Okay, I hope that was helpful. If you have questions about what I have been saying, feel free to get in touch. Thanks for subscribing. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.